watching all the brothers and sisters divided on the sunnah he gave. He be screaming out to the ummah of this world, saying you're to blame.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Contemporary Islamic Issues and Concepts on Huda TV. I'm your host, Arqam Rashid. In this episode, we will continue our discussion on the importance of seeking knowledge in Islam. If you recall, just to give you a recap from last episode, the Shaykh had divided knowledge into three categories, or what we can put into three categories. The first category is knowledge that is compulsory for every single Muslim to seek, and these things relate to his daily needs and his personal religious needs. After that, the second category is communal knowledge, which is knowledge that somebody or a group of people from the community have to seek. And these things could be religious, such as inheritance, who gets what after a person passes away, or such as medicine and engineering. Somebody in the community has to seek knowledge in this category as well. The third category is knowledge which is prohibited, not because of it being knowledge by Islam, but because of those actions being prohibited in Islam. So I'm going to start off by welcoming our wonderful guest, Shaykh Asim Al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shaykh, so I want to start you off with a small question. Do you think that it's important, or going to an Islamic university is important for you to be an Islamic scholar, or for anybody who wants to seek Islamic education, does he have to do it through an Islamic university, or can he just go to any shaykh he wants?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Knowledge is not limited to a university, as many people think. Nowadays, it's a convenient place to have a collection of sciences and scholars, per se, in one place where you can access knowledge through them. However, it is not the ideal way of seeking knowledge, because we've seen this through the academic process, that out of 100 students who go and seek knowledge in Islamic sciences, maybe you get one or two, maybe less, who are qualified to be scholars. So you end up with people with bachelor degrees in Islamic studies, or in Sharia, or in Usul al-Din, or in Hadith, or in Quran, but they don't have the essence of the knowledge, because they only took the very little of everything.
What is needed to pass the...
Yes, and usually, once they pass the exam, if you come a couple of weeks later and ask them about what they had examined, they had the exams in, they would fail like 70% of giving you the right answer, because it's gone. This type of knowledge is not concrete, it's not solid. While going to a shaykh, as we see in the masjids, in the halaqah, in the circles, who is a real proper shaykh, who has knowledge in most, if not all, sciences related to Islam, going there, as the Salaf explained and described, and bending your knees in front of the shaykh when he is giving his course or lecture, noting down, revising what you have noted down in the evening, having a set of questions, going the following day asking the shaykh your questions, clarifying your doubts and noting it down. This is the proper way of seeking knowledge, because this is both systematic and solid. In a classroom, in a university, you're sitting there for an hour, maybe you doze a bit when the doctor or the teacher is teaching, maybe you skip a class or two, but at the end result, what counts is the examination paper. So if you do well in it, you pass. You may be also an honor student, but this does not mean that you are a good student of knowledge or a scholar.
So what would you say makes a person a religious scholar, if not PhDs, if not any paper certificate? How could you recognize this person is a religious scholar, whereas this person is not? I mean, both of them could have been a graduate of the same PhD program. But how do we know this one is a scholar and this was not? You see this many times, people say, oh, he's not a scholar, but you see sometimes he has the same degree as somebody who everybody considers a scholar. How is this done?
Well, you have to look into his credentials. Yani the greatest scholars of all times. Were they university graduates? No.
Of course not.
But at the same time, they graduated from the masjid, which was itself more of a university. So if you look at those who teach in universities, they are either doctors or assistant professors or professors, but not necessarily they are scholars. They are good in their papers they write, the researchers they produce, but it is not necessarily that they are scholars. Look at Ibn Taymiyyah, look at Ibn Qayyim, look at Ibn Kathir, look at Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, look at the four Imams of Islam. None of them was a university graduate, but they traveled the world acquiring the knowledge they have. Like Sheikh al-Islam, al-Imam Ahmad, the Imam of the Hanbali school of thought. He went from Iraq to Syria to Egypt to Khurasan, where it is northeast of Iran and so on. It was all Sunni. They had nothing of Shia, alhamdulillah, at the time. And he went to Yemen and heard from Abdul Razzaq and the compiler of Musannaf. He went to Mecca and to Medina, and they didn't have any cars or airplanes. They had to do this on foot, mostly. And until he was about 40 years of age, he used to travel on foot, and he used to work to earn food while he is traveling. So these people did not graduate from universities. Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen, he didn't graduate from, though he used to teach in universities as well. So it is important to know that there are characteristics of such scholars that you should learn from, and that it is not specifically limited to university that would qualify you to be a scholar.
So if it's not limited to university, and obviously there's shuyukh that you can attend classes in the masjid. Now the issue is what we face nowadays, to relate it to a contemporary issue, is that almost every masjid has some sort of sheikh sitting giving his lecture. He has classes going on routinely. How do we know this is the person to take from? And do we just attend any class? Is there steps to learning Islamic knowledge? Is there level 1, level 2, level 3, like laid out format that we need to follow? Or do we just sit in any class and just benefit, alhamdulillah? How do we do this?
You've asked me two questions.
Yes, one is about, the first one being about which sheikh do we take from, because there's so many nowadays. And the second is which classes do we attend of these shuyukh?
Okay,
any
so
classes we want?
Take it easy on me, because so much information it makes me a little
Okay,
bit
so let's
confused.
start with the first one.
Okay.
Which sheikh do we take from? There's many circles. Which one do we go to?
This is something that you have to make your research in. First of all, not everyone who has a PhD is qualified. He's not a sheikh in the sense, because being a scholar requires that you have recommendations from other scholars who are true real scholars. We nowadays have a lot of wannabe scholars, and they probably get recommendations from other wannabe scholars as well. And you can judge by their features, by their characteristics, by their aqidah, that they're not real scholars. So if someone is teaching in a masjid, what's your name, akhi? My name is Abu Dujana As-Suri. Yeah, what's your real name? This is my real
Code
name.
name.
And he looks around, so, in a dubious matter. What's your background? I'm a student of shuyukh. Who are your shuyukh? Abu Muhammad al-Masri and Abu Abdullah al-Libi. I don't know these guys. What are you talking about? These are shuyukh of Islam. Ya akhi, I don't know who you're talking about. Give me names I know. So these are the names I have. So what do you preach? I preach Khilafah. And I preach that Islam will rise over the bodies of the infidels, of the kafir. And we have to kill, and we have to blow up people, and we have... Whoa, akhi, you're in the wrong masjid. Get the heck out of here before someone arrests you. This is not a scholar. Though he has a long beard, though maybe he wears a turban, black, blue, whatever color, though his thobe is short. So a proper scholar has to be acknowledged by proper scholars worldwide. They know that this guy, yeah, we have no objection to his teachings. MashaAllah, he's sound. He has to have a good aqeedah. So even if he has like 6 or 7 PhDs in fiqh and tafsir, etc., but he says, Allah is everywhere. What do you mean by everywhere? Allah Azza wa Jal is above His throne, as mentioned in 7 places in the Quran. So no, He's not above His throne. This is metaphorical. Allah is everywhere. This guy's aqeedah is corrupt, whether he's Ash'ari, he's Maturidi, he's Mu'tazili. Now, with the distinction between the far extremes. But still, he's not appropriate for you to learn from, because you're still fresh. You're like a dough. He may make you a croissant, may make you a big loaf of toast, depending on how he deals with you. But you must not go to such a person who has a corrupt aqeedah, who doesn't know the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, who does not recognize the beautiful attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has to be well versed in the sciences, different sciences. So he has to be fluent in Arabic, which is very important, because imagine a scholar who does not speak Arabic, and he gives tafsir of Quran.
But he doesn't speak Arabic.
But he does. Okay, where did you get this knowledge, mashallah? You can't be a computer. How do you know that وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ? What does غاسق mean? What does waqab mean? And this is one of the shortest surahs of the Quran. We read it every salah. He says, I don't know. Okay, if you don't know, how are you going to interpret it? So I'm going to read the commentary. Who wrote the commentary? I don't know. Sahih International, someone. So you're relying on someone's interpretation.
So you're interpreting somebody else's interpretation.
And you're commenting and you're becoming a scholar? You cannot be a scholar.
Sheikh, before you continue the list of qualities to look for in a teacher, we're going to go for a short break. So dear viewers, just to recap, the Sheikh has told us the first point that he mentioned was that the person that we are taking from has to be approved by the other scholars around him, not just hold a PhD or dress in a way that looks like a scholar, but rather approved by true scholars around the world or around his community that approve him of being a scholar before you actually go seek knowledge from him. So stay tuned, and as soon as we come back, we will speak about the other qualities to look for in a scholar. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Contemporary Islamic Issues on Huda TV. Now, before we took that short break, we were discussing the importance of seeking knowledge in Islam. Sheikh, so far you've told us a couple of points or a couple of things to look for when we search for a scholar to study from. Just to recap for the viewer, some of them were he has to be approved by the scholars around him. It's not that he just has a PhD or he dresses in a certain way that he can go to a circle and start preaching. Rather, people need to acknowledge him as a scholar for him to be an Islamic scholar. The second thing that you mentioned was his aqeedah has to be correct. So especially for the beginners, because they don't know which aqeedah is correct, so you have to go to somebody who you can trust in all aspects. The third is that he needs to know Arabic. If he's going to translate Islamic knowledge from Arabic, he can't be just giving it from a commentary in English, translated by God knows who, takes a book and says, okay, I'm reading the English translation of the Quran, I'm giving you my thoughts on this. Rather, he needs to know Arabic. Sheikh, if you can mention a couple of more points. I know there's many characteristics that you need to look for, a couple of vital points that you think are very important for the viewers, and then we can move on to a different question, inshallah, in our conversation.
Okay. As you've mentioned, the sky is the limit, but one of the most important characteristic that need to be found in a scholar is clearly displayed in a statement that the Salaf used to say and describe those who attend the gathering and the classes of Imam Ahmad. They say that his huge class, he's an Imam, he's not a scholar, he is the scholar of Islam. They used to attend about 5,000 people in his class. Imagine this huge number attending his class. Scholars say that 500 only of them were students of knowledge, writing down his hadith, writing down his verdicts and statements. The rest, the 4,500, were only there to learn from the way he speaks, the way he looks, his etiquette, his moral conduct. So it is extremely essential to learn from a scholar who has such qualities, because scholars say that beginners in seeking knowledge must not read in Ibn Hazm's books. And Imam Ibn Hazm is an Imam, but of the Zahiri school. Why do they prevent people from studying his books at the beginning? They say because he had a very sharp tongue, and he spoke ill about all four schools of thought and all other scholars who went, in his opinion, against the Quran and Sunnah or used qiyas or analogy. And he was very, very rough on them. So scholars say if you begin reading his books and learn from the way he debates and communicates, you end up being like him. Likewise, nowadays we have a group of Muslims who have excellent knowledge in Aqeedah, in Hadith, in Quran, in Arabic. They're good students of knowledge. However, they are ill-mannered. So whoever is not following their 4 or 5 shuyukh, they are not in accordance to the manhaj, and they are not part of the Salafiyya, and they take out all scholars of Islam except a handful that they're still dodgy about and they don't have the guts to speak ill about because Muslims accept them. But the others have no problem in discrediting them, in talking ill about them. Akhi, this is not da'wah. Da'wah is to communicate, is to point out mistakes in a nice and kind fashion. Ar-rifq is essential in such things. Therefore, such people, we tell the students of knowledge or the beginners not to go to them, because going to them corrupts their way of learning and makes them think high of themselves, low of every single one else.
Okay, and then if you remember from the beginning of the episode, I threw 2 questions at you at once.
Okay.
So we've dealt with the first question. The second one was, which classes should he start with? How does he know which books to start? How does he know, should he just enter Tafsir ibn Kathir right away, or is there something he needs to do before? Is there steps, like university, you know, they introduce you, they have classes like Fiqh 101. Is it the same way when it comes to studying with shuyukh, or is it different?
Okay. It's human nature that you have to crawl before you walk, and you have to walk before you run. You can't simply hit the road running, as they say. You have to do it gradually. And this is human nature. If you eat a good meal and it's not yet digested fully, and you put another meal onto it, you will get a stomach ache. And you have to do something about it. People differ. Some people can eat a real big meal and have no problem. Others can only eat an apple and they're full. People differ in their digestion, whether to food, whether to information, whether to knowledge. So I find people being able to memorize 10 pages a day, and others struggle to memorize 1 page per week. We have children going to school, finishing the Quran in memorization in no time. One of my nephews mashallah, memorized the whole Quran, Kitab al-Tawheed, Al-Aj al-Rumiyya, and different texts, books, when he was 10 years of age. And he was giving a certificate by Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen for his achievement. And that was normal for him. Kids, my kids, go to Tahfidh al-Quran. It's a public school, but by grade 9, they memorize the whole Quran. So people differ. People find it easy to digest such amount of information. People find it difficult. Therefore, you cannot have it all at once. I often get the question, Sheikh, should I start with memorizing the Quran, or learning books of Aqeedah, or learning fiqh, or learning Arabic? Akhi, this differs. The most essential thing, as we've started our episodes with, is to know what is mandatory upon you. So, Sheikh, should I memorize Surah Al-Baqarah or learn how to pray? Definitely learn how to pray. Should I recite this amount, or should I learn Arabic? Or do I have to know what is haram for me to do? No, definitely you have to know that intoxicants is haram, fornication is haram, etc. before you learn Arabic, because these are the essentials of your religion. Sheikh, I've got this all covered up. I know what is mandatory upon me. I know how to pray. So what should I do now? Well, you have to take a bit from every place, a flower from every garden, so that you wouldn't be so pressured in one science and you may not get bored of it. So go ahead in memorizing the Quran, but don't do it in a year. Take your time, like memorize 1 page a day and try to revise 2 or 3 pages of previous memorization. At the same time, you have to try and understand what you're memorizing. So it helps you to understand what page I'm memorizing, what is the tafsir of it. And it adds a lot of value to learn books of Aqeedah, basic books of Aqeedah, basic books of fiqh, different fatwas on certain things, and to take classes in Arabic, because you must master Arabic to be a student of knowledge. Not just knowing Arabic, you have to understand and master the language. I remember once I was reading in a website of an imam in America. So he was writing a translation of a hadith, that the martyrs are 7, other than the one who dies in the battlefield. And he was saying that the person who dies in a burning building, collapsed building, who drowns, and the one who is stabbed. And this was shocking to me, because I know the hadith, and stabbing with a knife is not included. So I went to the Arabic version and found out that the word he's referring to is mat'un. And mat'un is also means to be stabbed. But this was not
the intended
thing in the hadith. The intended thing in the hadith was from the word ta'un, which is the plague. So al-mat'un is the person who dies by the plague, is a martyr. Now, such translation, the brother knows Arabic, but he is not fluent in Arabic. That's why he made this mistake. And imagine people in America reading this hadith and being mugged in the middle of the night or by a thug with a knife, and he says, give me your money or I'll kill you. He said, go ahead, I want to be a martyr. Why are you doing this? Well, the Sheikh explained to us that the martyr is the one who's being stabbed. I want to die like a martyr. No, you will not die like a martyr. It's a wrong interpretation. So he has to master Arabic. Now, when we talk about Aqeedah, there are so many books in Aqeedah, and you cannot go and dive all of a sudden. You first have to learn how to swim in shallow water. So you have to take the basics, such as Kitab al-Tawheed or al-Usul al-Arba'. This is one of the early books for the Muslims to learn. Al-Usul al-Thalatha, Kitab al-Tawheed, and then Kashf al-Shubuhat, for example, for Imam al-Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. These books give you a sneak peek of Aqeedah and how to purify it from all innovated stuff, from all things that are not according to the Quran and Sunnah. Maybe if you finish them and thoroughly understand them, you go to Al-Aqeedah al-Wasitiyah of Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah. Or afterwards you can go to Al-Aqeedah al-Tahawiyah. And so on. So many books, but this is the very beginning. In fiqh, you can start with the basic books such as Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam is a very good book because it's based on hadith. So you learn the hadith and you understand the fiqh of it. Then you have Bulugh al-Maram, also is good. Or to study a short matan of one of the four schools of thought. Not because you are doing taqleed, but rather that you have to be focused and studying a specific text on fiqh, covering it all, then go back to purify it with the authentic hadith and know what is right and what is wrong. Tafsir, you have to read a simple book of tafsir that gives you concrete knowledge in a simple language, such as Tafsir al-Sa'di. This book of al-Sa'di is one of the easiest and most contemporary tafsir, and it's very nice. Afterwards you can go to Ibn Kathir, and in Arabic you have to go to a specialist to teach you, for example, the Ajurumiyya, or if you are more fluent in Arabic you can go for the Alfiyya and so on.
So there's, within Islamic knowledge, there are levels and steps that need to be learned, like you explained very well, that you give us a general idea of each subject, how to start and where to move on to afterwards. Shaykh, we're at the end of this episode, so I want to thank you very much for joining us here and giving us a wonderful conversation and a wonderful explanation of the concept of seeking knowledge in Islam. Thank you very much, Shaykh.
Jazakumullah khair.
Dear viewers, I hope you benefited from today's episode, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in our endeavor to seek knowledge. And until then, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was here today, watching all the brothers and sisters divided on the sunnah he gave. He'd be screaming out to the ummah of this world, saying you're to blame. Return to the guidance of Allah that will set you free.